everyone, welcome to the Win Cathy Show. I'm your host, Cathy Zhang. I know it's been quite a while since we updated this channel last time. But today, I'm bringing you some very important information which is related to a potential Supreme Court case. Some of you probably know the Brunson Brothers, the four brothers from Utah who played trumpet and became quite famous since the 1980s. They were on The Tonight Show, they performed 69 TV shows, and they made 150 live appearances throughout the United States and Canada with Loy Brunson, and they were included in the Christmas in Washington TV special with President Ronald Reagan. But do you know that a couple of the Brunson brothers have been representing themselves in lawsuits related to the 2020 election, and having one of the cases being on the conference of the Supreme Court for reconsideration in this February? According to Loy Brunson, the oldest brother, it is the most powerful petition for the Supreme Court. They are also having a letter campaign to the Supreme Court, which anyone could participate. So before we go to my interview with Loy Brunson and find out all the details, please remember to click the like button. Also, because this interview is pretty long and comprehensive, there are some sensitive information. The second part will be on Ganjin World, the new platform, which I will explain a bit later. Without further ado, let's go to the interview. Loy, welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. So we understand that the Supreme Court has updated your motion for reconsideration and have it on the conference on February 17th. Could you just briefly tell us what this case is about?
Yes, it's about our representatives and our president and vice president breaking their oath of office by participating or I should say not supporting a simple pause 10-day investigation before the electoral vote was certified. So when the electoral vote was certified, making Biden president, Kamala Harris vice president, there was the Congress got together and there were 100 members of Congress that had a mountain of evidence and testified that there needed to be at least a 10-day pause before they certified the electoral votes in order to investigate the claims of fraud and illegal things that were happening that would highly suggest that there was a domestic or probably foreign or both enemies of the Constitution and of our election system that needed to be investigated to show that they were defending us against outside or inside interference into our election process. So what we did is we brought a lawsuit, two lawsuits, and one of them could reach the Supreme Court within the next few weeks. We have two identical lawsuits. So we brought a lawsuit against every single person that participated and basically benefited from them not investigating, taking 10 days to investigate the fraud claims presented by over 100 members of Congress, witnessing that there needed to be an investigation. It's like if you witness a crime or you think a crime has happened, you go to the police and you report it, and they are obligated to investigate that crime to make sure that there either was a crime or was not a crime. And when you have two witnesses that go to the police, then they're doubly accountable. And if they don't investigate, they can be held criminally liable. So when you have 100 witnesses, congressional members of the U.S. House and Senate, that are saying we need to pause for a 10-day investigation, and they simply don't do that, and they vote against it, then they've committed some acts that they need to be accountable for. Now, the Congress has immunity with what they say on the House floor, but they do not have immunity. There's nowhere where it says they have immunity with what they do with their voting. So we brought a federal case against them with my name on it, and we got stuck. The judge blocked it, and canceled it out, even after 388 summonses were issued by the U.S. Marshal Service in Washington, D.C., March 31st, 2021. The U.S. Marshal Service served my summons and complaint on Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff, and about 385 others. And they started to do the service, and then the next day, the federal court canceled that service, called it back, said that it was a clerical error, and basically canceled my lawsuit. Well, they're not allowed to do that. That's against the law. So we complained about that to the higher court, and they didn't help us. And then we complained in state court. And after we battled out in those courts, a few weeks later, they unblocked my case. And not only did they unblock it, but they filed it for me. The federal court judge filed my case and ordered the clerk of the court to reissue 388 summonses. And so that case is still alive. So the case that's at the Supreme Court right now was denied an opportunity to be heard from both sides in a full-blown hearing where they make the final decision. And they denied that on January 6th. So we filed a petition for rehearing, and they've granted us another conference. So now the 9 justices on February 17th will go into a conference by themselves with the petitions for rehearing and the original petition for writ of certiorari, and they will take another vote. And if we get 4 votes out of the 9, 9 will vote. And if 4 out of the 9 say, let's move this forward to a hearing, then we're granted a hearing where both sides can argue in front of the justices. But because the Supreme Court has already characterized this case as a national emergency, and they did that by allowing us to bypass the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. In order to go to the Supreme Court, you've got to go through the lower courts, and they allowed us to bypass the final 10th Circuit Court of Appeals to come to them with a Supreme Court Rule 11, which means it's a national emergency. So because it's a national emergency, the Supreme Court, even if they deny a hearing, they can adjudicate the full complaint behind closed doors. They can do it in secret as a closed case because of the national importance that this is. So what we're doing right now is we're directing people, inviting people to go to brunsonbrothers.com so they can sign a digital letter to the Supreme Court. You don't have to be a citizen of the United States. You can be anywhere in the world. And you sign this petition digitally, and you add your personal message to it. And we have a company that will then print the letter and put it in an envelope and put the postage on it and send it individually to the U.S. Supreme Court with their contact information as well. So we're launching that. So we feel strongly that what the Supreme Court needs this time around and the next time around, if we're going to keep at this, so they've got some more pleadings coming, is what we need to do as soon as possible, raise awareness, which is what you're helping us do right now. We appreciate that very much. And invite people to show the United States Supreme Court as friends of the court. These are friendly letters. We just want it to stay positive, encouraging them to support. It's basically supporting the oath of office, because what we're really suing the defendants about is they violated their oath of office. And Article 6 of the Constitution of the United States is very clear. It says they shall be bound by oath to this Constitution. And in order to be bound by oath, you can't have the unconstitutional immunity that they've given themselves. So we're asking the court to at least strip the immunity so that they can be held accountable for the decisions they make with their voting in the Congress. So what this case is, this characterized as a Rule 11, this is the first time that these justices have ever seen a Rule 11 docketed, that they've ever allowed a Rule 11 to be docketed. And so this is the first time that a national emergency petition for writ of certiorari has been filed with the Supreme Court since the 1970s under the Nixon administration. So this is a unique situation and a great opportunity for people to get involved and show the Supreme Court that they support the Constitution, they support the oath of office, they support the fact that the Constitution requires it to be binding, and they do that with as many letters as they want. And like I said, you can go to brunsonbrothers.com, and it'll show instructions on how to do the digital version that is printed out in their behalf. You can actually take your finger, and it'll take a picture of your signature with your finger on your phone or the mouse on the computer, So they actually have a photograph of your signature showing that you're a real person sending this letter through this system. So we're encouraging people to do that to show the United States Supreme Court the support which we feel they would want and need, so that they feel like they've got the support of we the people, because they represent we the people. This is a government of the people, for the people, by the people, and that's what the letter campaign is about.
Wow, that's a lot of information. So yeah, Loy, just curious, for the Supreme Court to issue this as a national emergency, did you request for that, or why did they categorize this case as the national emergency?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because we were stuck in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. They wouldn't make a decision. And so we thought our goal at the beginning was to get it to the United States Supreme Court, because they have the final say. So because the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals would not make a decision, after several months, we decided we'd better find a way to do something. And so two of us encouraged my third brother that handles the legal part of this. We said, Darren, you've got to find a way to get this to the Supreme Court without the 10th Circuit Court making a decision. And he says, no, there's no way. If the 10th Circuit Court does not make a decision, you cannot take it to the U.S. Supreme Court. So he says, well, keep looking, keep digging, keep researching, and try to find a way to do that. So a few days later, he called me on the phone, and he says, Loy, I found it. There's a Supreme Court Rule 11, so we will prepare the petition for writ of certiorari with a stamp on it saying, this court's Rule 11. And if they agree that it's a national emergency, they will allow it to be docketed. So we were excited. So we got that all prepared, and we sent it off to them. About 5 days later, they called us on the phone. The clerk of the court's office called us on the phone, a case analyst, and told us that they were accepting our case as a Rule 11, that we did not need to get a decision from the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. So we started preparing more documents that they wanted included in it. They asked us if we would include some other documents, the motion to dismiss from the U.S. attorneys. And so we started reformatting it, including those documents. And then the 10th Circuit made a decision. So we called the court, and the court, we said, should we keep the Rule 11 information on there, or do you not need it? And they said, we don't need it. Get it to us soon. How soon can you get it to us? And so we told them about 2 weeks, and they said, can you get it to us sooner than that? And we said, we'll try. So we got it to them a week earlier. That's probably a little confusing. So what happened basically is the Supreme Court gave us permission under Rule 11, a national emergency, to bypass the 10th Circuit. But I think the 10th Circuit Court got some kind of word or information, so they hurried and made a decision. So we didn't even need to stamp it Rule 11. But the court can characterize any case as a national emergency without you stamping it on the cover of the petition. So they characterized it with us that as a Rule 11 emergency petition at the beginning of this. So they denied it on the 6th, but we feel strongly that a lot of it has to do with timing. So we're giving them another opportunity to go into conference on the 17th, which they've docketed and they've scheduled. But at the same, I just want to reemphasize the fact that now that they have it on their shelf, or in their arsenal, you could say, they can pull it out and execute the full complaint anytime they want. Normally, petitions are a reversal of a lower court's decision or an upholding of a lower court's decision. But under Rule 11, they can completely adjudicate the whole complaint and execute the reliefs and the judgments and everything having to do with that.
So basically, you applied for this categorization, and the Supreme Court approved it.
Yes, that's basically it.
That's amazing, because they denied the case or to hear the case already, but somehow they accept your repeal.
Petition for rehearing. Now, I just want to emphasize again, even though they deny a hearing does not mean that behind closed doors they can't go ahead and adjudicate and judge and completely listen and vote on the whole complaint as a sealed case. So they have that power. Once you provide them a petition that's docketed, even if they deny a hearing, they can, if they feel like the time is right or much more important time to do something about it, they can pull it off the shelf without you doing anything, without a petition for rehearing, without anything, and they can use that. So I've had phone calls from pretty high profile people telling me that they are confident that the Congress is acting in a way right now based on the fact that the Supreme Court at any moment could completely adjudicate the full complaint because we filed the first petition. So in other words, we don't really need to file a petition for rehearing, but we're doing that to encourage the justices to be aware of it and to invite people to show the justices the support so that then when they do completely adjudicate the whole case, they'll have a tremendous amount of support from people even around the world telling them that they're anxious to have the Supreme Court uphold the Constitution, uphold the binding oath of office, and to preserve our Constitution and our liberties.
Got it. So, Loy, could you explain to our audience the legal basis for this case, especially you said a 10-day investigation. So where does that come from?
Well, the 10-day investigation, I've heard different stories about that. And when 100 members of Congress say there needs to be an investigation, there's liability there. As far as actual written statutes or rules of the House and Senate, I've heard different stories about what they are, and I haven't researched that. My brother could probably answer that more. But we have a federal constitution. The Constitution of the United States protects our right for petition of redress of grievances and due process to sue anyone, any entity, in any court. We have that protected right in our federal constitution and in our state constitution. So when my brother filed his case, which was identical to mine, he filed his in state court and they removed it to federal court. And so in our pleadings, we show the judges and the U.S. attorneys that we have every right in the world to do this. Now, if we had gone to a law firm and hired them to do this for us, they would have told us that we couldn't go to state court and that we could not go to federal court. But we proved that you can, and we did. They would have told us that they wouldn't be able to file our lawsuit unless we got permission from the sergeant in arms. Actually, like you've got to get permission from the government to sue the government. That's not constitution. That's not the Constitution. The Constitution protects our right to sue any entity, including government entities, in any court. So we worked through the federal court and two federal courts, and they've allowed us to move forward with this. So we've proven to ourselves and to others, I believe, that if we had gone to, like I said, to a law firm and asked them to do it for us, we would have hit a dead end because they would have had us go to a claims court. We would have never been able to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. So the legal authority behind our right to bring a lawsuit like this is found in the state and federal constitutions, the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Utah.
So that just sounds very, amazing that you and your brothers, any of you a lawyer?
No, none of us are lawyers, but one of us has had legal experience because he represented himself in several cases before this one and actually made it to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the reason attorneys wouldn't have handled this case is because they're taught in law school you can't do what we're doing and we're proving we can do based on our constitutionally protected rights of due process and the protected right in the First Amendment for the petition of redress of grievances. And so they've just been schooled in a way that would not allow them to do what we're doing. So hopefully the fact that we're doing this is opening up opportunities for law firms and attorneys to see that they can do it this way without getting permission from the sergeant in arms, without getting a waiver, basically without having to get permission from the government to sue a government agency.
Mm-hmm. So for people who know the Brunson Brothers, you are known for your trumpets, right? So yeah, how come you are so familiar with the Constitution? You could even do things that the lawyers thought it couldn't be done.
Well, I think part of it is when we were young kids, we didn't want to go to school. So my father was a school teacher, and my mom was pretty concerned about that. And they just kind of said, well, if you're not going to go to school, then the responsibility is on you. And I remember when that happened, my brothers were going, oh my gosh, you mean if we ask, we don't need to, if whatever we do is our responsibility and our lives are our responsibility, our future is our responsibility. So I remember at that time, they weren't going to school and they decided to get a high school diploma without going to school. And they started doing that, but the school district wouldn't allow them to do that because they were too young. So they decided they were going to become famous trumpet players, and that would be a way to make a living without having to go to school. So we just kind of been self-taught from then on. My brothers would, when they first started practicing, they would practice from the most difficult music books of exercises. It's called the Arbans. That's what professional musicians practice and become great at, so that they can go into sessions and read charts, And so they just didn't want anything. They didn't want to do anything in a beginner sort of way. They just want to get right into it and accomplish what they needed to accomplish. So my brothers, we were taught by our parents that you could achieve anything if you believed and you worked hard enough. And we were never taught that we couldn't do something. We just taught that we wouldn't be able to do something if we didn't have the ability, or we didn't have the drive to work hard enough to achieve what we wanted to achieve. So we just kind of had that mindset our whole lives, where if we see we want to accomplish something, we just figure out a way to do it. And regardless of what anyone else is saying, we just find ways to get it done. And I think that's why we're able to go where no one else has gone before.
Wow, that's just amazing. Just curious, are you one of the trumpetists, or?
I'm the lead trumpet player.
Oh, wow.
My brothers would tell you, if you asked them, they'd tell you they were, but don't believe them. I'm the oldest brother. When we started playing trumpets, I was like about a foot taller than they were. So I told them, I was asked by my brother if I would be the plaintiff on the first lawsuit that's still alive in federal court. It has not been dismissed. They canceled it, and we fought them on it, and they refiled it, like I mentioned. And so my brothers asked me if I would be the lead guy on this and be the first plaintiff. And then as we were battling mine, my brother decided we should have another lawsuit, so we'd have different judges, and one of these was going to get the Supreme Court first. And luckily we did that, because my brother volunteered to be the plaintiff on that, and that's Roland. And so his case, even though his case started quite a while after mine, his case made it to the Supreme Court first. So we're real glad we did both. And then we're excited to have two cases at the Supreme Court at the same time. So as soon as the judge makes a decision on mine, which we hope he does pretty soon, we'll take that to the Supreme Court, and then we'll have two petitions of writ of certiorari at the Supreme Court, and hopefully a lot of people will find out about it. We want at least 1 million people to send in letters. My dream would be 100 million. You have 100 million letters, believe me, the Supreme Court will do the right thing. So we're not quitting. We're going to keep this thing moving, and a lot of people are learning about this. And the most important thing, I just want to say this again, is your viewers and others writing letters. Go to brunsonbrothers.com. Do it that way if you'd like. It makes it real easy. But show the Supreme Court how much tremendous support they have, not just in the United States, but around the world.
So you think even letters from outside of the United States would help?
Absolutely, because all the nations of the earth are affected by the United States, and we have allies. And so every freedom-loving, liberty-loving person on the planet we would hope that they would hear about this and have an opportunity to send a letter, through the internet. And I tell people, some people believe that we get our rights here in the U.S. from the Constitution. No. Our rights are exactly the same as everyone else's in every country on the planet. Everyone that's alive has the same rights. And when governments do things that violate those rights, that's exactly what they're doing. They're violating the rights. Governments can't give you rights. They can only violate your rights or protect your rights. So, and that's what we're showing in this lawsuit, is that we're entitled to a government that protects our rights with a binding oath. And it's the unalienable rights given to us by God that belongs to every single person alive on planet Earth, regardless of whether their government is violating those rights or protecting their rights. And hopefully they're protecting their rights. And that's what the Constitution is for, is to make sure the government protects our rights we had even before there was a Constitution.
Yeah, very well said. So, Loy, in people's mind, you are musicians, you are trumpets, and why you are so much into, the so-called politics?
Well, our parents taught us about our rights, taught us as children that we come to this earth with rights from God. And so we were taught that. And everyone, I think, wants to exercise their right to pursue their happiness and to pursue their own life without a government telling them how to do that or what they can't do and what they can do and what they can do for a profession and can't do for a profession. So I think it was instilled in us. And I think everyone is born with a little spark of light. We call it the light of Christ, that every single person on earth is born with this light of Christ that is a drive towards freedom and liberty and justice and respecting other people's rights to pursue their dreams, pursue their happiness. So there was a time when I felt guilty for not studying the Constitution, which we're supposed to do in this country. Immigrants that come in and take a test, a constitutional test, probably know a lot more about the Constitution than most voters that have been born here in the United States. So there was a point in my life where I felt guilty for not reading the Constitution. Actually, it was Barack Obama on national television said that the Constitution was fundamentally flawed. And I thought, I better read this document and study it like I've never done before. And I read the oath that he took. He swore to uphold and defend the Constitution. You can't uphold and defend the Constitution when you insinuate that the Constitution is based on some fundamental mistake. And so as I was reading it, I really got caught up in some of the concepts that I had never read before. And it got me excited about reading more. And I actually, because I had an understanding of central banking, I knew what a privately owned central bank was. Because I had that understanding, it was from Bill Still's The Money Masters. I think it's available on YouTube now, The Money Masters. And I think it was part 21 that really struck me. It's like, we need to understand money. And so as I understood where money comes from, I was able to study the Constitution and find concepts that I discovered had never been published before. So that's a book I have. It's 7 discoveries everyone should know in the Constitution, basically, is what it is. And it's that's at the 7discoveries.com website. And can I share one of the discoveries with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I found now the first 10 amendments to the Constitution are defined by Congress as further declaratory and restrictive clauses to the Constitution. And the 9th Amendment I found and I identify as the interpretation clause. The 9th Amendment demands that the Constitution only be interpreted in ways that protect our unalienable God-given rights. And that's never been published before. So what I found is there's some power clauses in the Constitution that have been overlooked and I think intentionally hidden by people that don't want us to understand the powers in the Constitution to protect our rights. So that's one of the discoveries. And there are others there having to do with taxation and money and central banking.
It is curious how the Brunson brothers have the confidence to represent themselves in the lawsuits and are able to accomplish what they said common lawyers won't be able to do with their background of being trumpeters. So please continue to watch part 2 of my interview with Loy Brunson on Ganjing World. You may wonder what Ganjing means. So still remember what the Chinese word for freedom and liberty that I taught everybody? Someone may still remember, right? So it's called 自由, which means freedom or liberty. So 干净 is the Chinese word meaning clean, because this new platform does not censor speech and the contents are very clean and family friendly. Although Ganjing World is still pretty new, but it has been developing very fast. Wayne and I highly recommend this platform to you and encourage you to follow our channel on Ganjing World. Just go to ganjing.com and search Wei and Cathy Show. So please support us by clicking the like button, sharing this video with more people, and continue to Ganjin World to watch the second half of my interview with Loy Brunson.